Hello and welcome to another development show, number 3 of the year. We're going along quite quickly. I can't believe we're almost through January already. Um, yeah, 25th of January. Wow. It's going to be a fast year. Going to be a fast year, I think. I'd like to thank and welcome Susan for joining us tonight. We're going to learn a lot. I think we've got a lot to unwrap here just from a quick conversation. So, Susan, if you'd like to introduce yourself to our listeners.
I My name is Susan. I have 25 years in office environment and uh, corporate culture experience, and I come from in my personal life. I come from immigrant parents. Um, I was born here, but I was raised culturally in different standards. So there's a lot of moving pieces to me. So you have a lot to dig into for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fascinating. I think um the kind of the immigration thing is is really important and settling into new cultures, new ways of doing things. Um, so how old were you when you moved to the States, or were you
Well,
born in the
actually,
States?
I was born in the States, and my father and mother met in New York, of all places. Um, then they moved to more warmer places like Florida, and then we ended up in California. I think I was I was somewhere around 6 or 7 when we came to California. And even now, if you go to Florida versus California or even New York, if you really think of the dynamics in each of
Mm,
those states, very different. It's like a low, medium, and high of engagement. So, and the culture shifts and everything about it was so different. So, instantly, we were constantly changing. And both of my parents, my mother, she was from England, and my father was from Portugal. They both spoke English, and they too. We were all on a journey to learn, so it was different.
yeah, I was going to mention that. My kind of I've been to California a few years ago, and it wasn't what I would have classed as typical America.
No.
And I don't want to bring any preconceptions in there. But it kind of what in the UK, and obviously making connections and friends throughout the states. It's really interesting. I'm really fascinated by cultures, and even within a country
Yes.
that there are so many different kind of cultures going around. Um, and one of the things we want to talk about really was kind of environments tonight. Um, and what we discuss by environment, some people feel or think that your environment that you're in is just the physical aspect. So if we take a work based environment, it's who you in the office with, the layout of the office, and but to me, environment is everything that we consume. So
Mhm.
kind of TV shows, or the books that we read, the music we're exposed to, the conversations that we have. There's so many other things that make up our environment. I always go back to our senses that we have. Sight and sound, smell, taste, and all of these, and touch, obviously. All of these create our environment. So I should imagine that you've experienced quite a few different environments. So really, is it what is the key components to these kind of quicker settlements in a new environment? Would it be things like adaptability and flexibility, or is it something a little bit deeper?
It's deep. I would say the first thing that we have to ask ourselves sometimes immediately, in a job environment, um, it doesn't come up often, but people will ask, well, what do you think is your greatest weakness? um, I really wish that we would have more dialogue everywhere about what keeps you grounded? Because to me, that's what we have to do for ourselves in this day and age. And this is couldn't be more perfect timing, because I feel like I can even tell you right now, being on this video, I feel like the dynamics of how we do business, how we communicate, how we process emotions, we're on a hyper speed, and we don't have that model. Just like any person that was deemed and praised for being revolutionary, at one point they were criticized, they were outcast, and they had that resiliency to stay grounded, keep going. And it's not easy. It's so I would say that being grounded in knowing who you are at the core of yourself, and knowing that nobody can touch that. Like the people always say, "Oh, my heart is broken," and and it's the irony is the physical touch of a heart can't be done, but emotionally, depending on how something is received, it can crush you. And that's where I would say for anyone in trying to develop on a personal level in their environment, adaptability is it becomes easier when you know at the core of who you are, what you stand for, what are your boundaries. And that's where we are now. Because of the pandemic and all of us being on a hyperspeed, we don't have that model yet. Business is moving so fast, communication is so fast that it's so easy to swipe up, down, like, not like, mute them, send a mean comment, and block them. And we have taken away the most basic human skill of communication. And people say communicate, and they throw it around like someone that would say, "I love you" every day. Do they really mean it, or is it just autopilot?
Mm.
And people have to dig into that. And adaptability, it's easy when you start with the basics. Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, being grounded is something that is, yeah, it's very core to who we are, and it's knowing. Um, I talk a lot about kind of the start of everything, really, of any kind of development, any movement is self awareness. If you're not self aware of what keeps you grounded, it's very easy to run away, and
Yes.
then you can end up feeling lost because you're so far away from who you were that you can turn around, and I'm talking from personal experience here as well, that you can suddenly turn around one day and go, I don't know who I am. I genuinely don't know. I might be a parent, I might be a husband, I might be
Mhm.
a manager, I might be a leader, I might be all sorts of things. But then you go, well, actually, let's look under the surface. Let's
Mhm.
remove those titles, look under the surface, and who am I? What are my values? What do I stand for? And I know quite early on in my own development, I was like, right, let's list my 5 values. I couldn't. I could not do it.
Wow.
And I was just like, well, and then I brought up things like integrity, um, discipline. And then I started looking at these going, well, what does integrity mean to me? We know the definition of doing the right thing, even if it's against everybody else. Sorry, doing the right thing even though someone's not watching, or
Mhm.
there's various definitions. And I was thinking, well, do I actually do that? And it really is, when we talk about grounding and self, it can go so deep into us, but it has to be the starting block. and it's something that I worked on quite a lot, was finding. I mean, I'm not ashamed at saying it. I Googled personal values,
Mhm.
and I brought up a list of like 200, and I went through them, and I ended up with about 30. And I thought, well, yeah, all of these are important to me, but what are the most important? What are the five most important ones? And and then from there, they changed, because the more I discovered myself, the more that the more that was revealed, and okay, so that I've got this one, and yes, it is important, but is it more important than one that I've left out?
Mhm.
And we do, and we change, and grounding, I think, is also very, gratitude is a great place to be grounded. It doesn't matter how far we go. We talk about, or I talk about anchors quite a lot. That we have anchors in our life, and it doesn't matter how far you travel from the anchor, it will always be there and always hold us back. Now, sometimes anchors are helpful, and sometimes they're not helpful. So, if you're focusing on something in the past and you're going, right, I'm going to prove that person wrong, that's your focus, but you'll always be dragged back there. So we can put anchors in our life. We can place anchors in our life that will hold us. So when you find the reasons for your grounding, the reasons your core, you can put an anchor down there, and you won't ever move too far away from that. But yeah, going on something else you said, yeah, the pace of life at the moment is ridiculous. Um, Here we are in 2022.
Yes.
I bet 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we wouldn't be sat here, virtually two different countries, streaming across three platforms. It's just the technology's moved,
Extremely far and fast.
but humans haven't.
Exactly. And that's where I say the the model is not out there. So the people, and I'm a very analytical individual. I look at patterns, and like you said, about the environment. Sometimes I can sit in a loud, chaotic, stressful environment, but I am as cool as can be, because inside, everything I'm taking in is like a computer. It's like a one and a zero. I'm coding it, I'm translating it, and I'm filing it somewhere. And like you said, when you Googled your five values, and when you couldn't just think of one, um, it because that's a new level, and it's amazing to be vulnerable. Everyone today wants to be polished and perfect, and um we're not the Brady Bunch. We're not the Leave It to Beaver family. There is no, if someone says that they're perfect, I guarantee you there is someone that will find your flaws. And with this technology, and especially with the last couple years, I don't think we've ever had this much engagement on development on any level, and how much as human beings emotionally we felt that void immediately, immediately, and loss was on a level everywhere, and all of that translates to relatability. Um, Even now today, emotionally and developmentally, we don't write letters anymore. We don't pen pals. We don't do that. Why? Because with a click, depending on the platform you want to be in, people will perfect themselves, or use filters, or not use certain words. How about just be authentic? Just be authentic. And um, in life, for you to go through that self discovery and self awareness and be where you are today, your anchors come from a lot of pain, a lot of lessons, a lot of wisdom from that. And that's where us having this conversation, other people joining in, and difference of opinions is amazing. It's amazing because at some point there will be a snippet from you, from me, from someone's other viewpoint that someone can take together, mash together, and make their own anchor, and find their have that moment of self-awareness, because we take acceptance as validation, or as acceptance as approval. No. Just like I was saying, the craziest the people that were deemed crazy for having an out of box ideology that later became a model of some sort, whether it be in mental health or communication, or um, look at PMBOK for the book for project management. Those are all methodologies and models and processes. And in human development, we say communicate. It's not hard to be vulnerable, not hard to be humble, not hard to be accountable. But the feeling, the sensory feeling behind it, people struggle to
Mm.
this day and age with all the tools. We're not catching up.
And I think, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's vulnerability is an amazing thing. If you can be vulnerable, but I think that people struggle a lot because of two things mainly. One of them, again, we'll kind of go back to grounding, that someone doesn't want to be vulnerable because they don't know who they are. They don't know where they've come from. And the other really is a word that you mentioned as well, which is boundaries.
Hmm.
Boundaries are so strong. It allows so much growth because I can come on here and I'll admit, and I do, I fall into this trap. And last week I admitted that I first thing in the morning it's coffee and social media. And and people, you read all the time, no, you shouldn't do this, no, you shouldn't do that.
Hmm.
But for me, it's intentional. It has a purpose. So that's what I do. And I might get some haters. I haven't had any haters for a while, which has been quite nice. But um,
That's always a good thing.
I don't know, is it? Anyway,
It
um, but it's having those boundaries and saying, well, no, this is me, and that is the most important boundary that we can have. Is say, this is me in my entirety, my vulnerability, my strengths, my weaknesses, things I know, things I don't know. This is who I am. I am going to improve. And yes, I can tell you, but please don't encroach on that boundaries. Don't take my vulnerability as a weakness or something to manipulate me or
Mhm.
something to try and drag me down to where you are because you're not growing. And it's having
Exactly.
that strong boundaries to be able to say, I don't know this. Can you tell me? Can you explain it to me? And again, this kind of feeds back into that communication as well. But it starts with self, that you have to have those boundaries. You have to understand what you will accept, what you won't accept,
Mhm.
and reason why. And that's the thing. Don't just, with a boundary, don't say, I will not accept this behavior. And someone said, well, why won't you? And you go, I don't know. I just think I shouldn't. And then it kind of gets that doubting. Um, yeah, but communication is a big one. You've mentioned the fact that the art of communication is quite lost. Um, and technology has brought us some wonderful, amazing things, but yet it's taken some wonderful, amazing things away from us as well.
Mhm.
So we spend all the time online. We write, as you say, you kind of you can write something and then you read it and you correct some words and you remove some words, or you can make yourself seem um, more intelligent that you are.
Mhm.
You can give off, if we talk about LinkedIn, you can certainly give off a perspective about yourself that may not be true.
Right.
Um, and one of the reasons that I love doing these live shows is because there's no hiding from it. Even if you take a video, you could do 20, 30 takes
Yes. Yes.
until you're right. I mean, I take probably 10 because my mind goes blank, but that's just me. I should do an outtakes video at some point. But there'd be lots of swear words in there, unfortunately. So we maybe
Hey,
not.
it's accepted in most places.
But yeah, it is. It's about that authenticity. It's about
Mhm.
vulnerability. It's about knowing who you are and being proud of who you are, and not allowing people to take that away from you.
Yes.
And I think that that's one of the biggest boundaries that we can put in, is to say, you're not going to take away who I am from me. I might give you something,
Mhm.
but you're never going to take it away. And I think that sometimes when we talk about boundaries, it's very, people see it as a very hard line,
Mhm.
or actually it's a lot more flexible than that. But once you've got the boundary in place, you then get a choice of,
Mhm.
do I move it for this person? Do I not? If I do move it, I'm strong enough to take it back if I need to. But yeah, one of the things that I've really missed about communication is body language. And when
Mhm.
we're talking about environment, body language is so important, and it's something I've realized over time that I've got, or I did have, quite negative body language, um, unintentionally. But kind of when I started to look at body language and learn about body language, I could see why I'd got that, and it kind of came back to self.
Mhm.
I was allowing someone to be doing something. So I'd be sat in meetings, in management meetings and board meetings and things, and I would be allowing people to take the conversation one way.
Mhm.
I'm being polite. Kind of almost dominate,
You're
almost
in a safe
dominate.
place. You're in a safe
Yeah,
place.
I'm a safe place. There's only a few people watching. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's kind of allowing people to dominate the conversation, even though I
Mhm.
didn't agree. So of course the body language got quite negative, turned to the side, folded arms, and and then I'd walk out and go, why didn't I say something? Why did I not disagree? Why did I not put my opinion forwards? Whether people listened to it, whether people took it on board,
Mhm.
is something completely different. But actually, it was like, I felt like when I didn't, things were taken away from me, like my voice was taken away from me
Mhm.
because someone was dominating, and that isn't who I am. It's not my style. Um, and it is with, yeah, communication is so key. And people, you're right, people throw it about all the time. Oh, you need to learn to communicate. You need to, and what I find is those people that are pushing out communication and talking about communication. You need to communicate better.
Mhm.
It's them that has the problem with communication because they don't know
Yes.
how to
Yes.
communicate.
I would
And
do a jumping high five, but we're continents apart.
yeah, and it is. I find that, and people say, I don't understand what you're saying. You're not communicating it very well. Okay, I could be clearer. I could put it another way. But at the same time, if you learn how to communicate with me, you will know not to say you're not communicating very well. You will know the questions to ask to get the information
Yes.
that you want. And that is a conversation, and that is a communication. And it's so important that we talk about this. And um it certainly was what I wasn't going to get onto tonight, but yeah, it's certainly, from a leadership perspective, from a team perspective, that that I always see leaders and leaderships as being almost like a coaching role. You need to be able to coach your team to understand where you're coming from, and
Yes.
to be open to conversation, to be open to that communication. Um, and it is a fascinating. It's, I said earlier that, leadership is one of those funny things, and in life as well, that the phrase to be unselfish, you first need to be selfish, and it feeds into that selfishness isn't self-care isn't selfish,
No,
you know,
not at
and,
all.
again, it's another word. Selfish is another word that's thrown around by a lot of people. When you talk about something and people saying, well, you're being very selfish with that, you should be doing this instead. And quite often it's something that they wouldn't do, but they're using that word to make you feel bad, so you do it.
Mhm.
um I mean,
You have you have to ask yourself, you know, for me, if someone were to tell me that I'm being selfish to take care of self-care, the question then would be posed back to them is, if I'm no good for myself, how could I be good for you? So it all begins with me. And if you're not going to allow me to be selfish with my self-care, then you don't care about me enough to be in your life that way. It's more you're projecting your fears of my changing and self-development and self-growth because I won't be beneficial to you as I am maybe 5 days from now, a day from now, an hour from now. And if you and I were in that same meeting, as you lean back, I'd be leaning forward. Because it's an irony, because when it comes to communication, a woman can do the same behaviors, approach things the same way as a man, but I don't look at sexism that way. And they get deemed aggressive. How about confident, progressive? But we don't get tied to those kind of anchors. But I would have been in the same meeting with you, and as you leaned back, I would have leaned forward, probably made full on eye contact. And as soon as they finished speaking and I had the opportunity, I would ask for clarification. And definitely, because of knowing who I am, I'd say, so you're saying, so what you're telling us is, or what we're supposed to understand is, for clarity. And at that moment, for me, that is the evaluation time. And that's because of being aware, being the environment we are in now globally. I'm not wasting time. And people that are trying to develop on any level, don't waste your time to get validation or acceptance, uh, or fear of projection their fears on you. Speak up. uh, what do you have to lose? What, because when I hear you speak and the experiences you've had, I identify with that, because when you come into the world, you come in with nothing. You leave physically with nothing. And the one thing I always want to keep is my character and my reputation of who I know I am. I am not going to allow someone, even my peers that I feel like aren't there yet, I will defend them. I'm that person that if there's a bully, trust me, if you're bullying my friend, I promise you I will step in and intervene.
Mm.
And I totally identify with everything you're saying there. It's communication, it's a word, but it's not something people are doing. I don't know how we can fix it though. That's the problem.
It's one of those that I think comes down to education, and I'm hoping that as we go through generations, it will get better and it will get easier, because the one of the things that has come out of this pandemic is that it has affected everyone in the world. It
Hmm.
hasn't been isolated where other things have a little bit. And there was something a few years ago with talking between the UK and America, that we had some bovine diseases. So America could say, well, we're not importing British meat, we're not doing this, we're not doing, and again, that was isolating someone. And
Yes.
but that has been removed. It's been every country's had to shut borders. Every country's had to put regulations in. So it became a quite an even um, playing field that we were all on. So hopefully that's one of the lessons that we can take, that it affects everyone globally.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, no, I kind of resonate when you were talking about kind of sexism in the workplace and how women are perceived when they have the same character traits as men. Um, and it's funny because I think sexism, racism, ageism are there out of fear. Um,
Even now, a new one, colorism. I mean, people didn't wanna talk about it then, but it happens all the time.
yeah, I mean, I've suffered from ageism in the past. When I moved up into management, I was 10, 15 years younger than the
When you make
other
when
members
you
of the
went to
management teams.
when you
So,
went to management, did you feel a a a separation or a disconnect from those people that automatically said, "Oh, your management, can't talk to you."
um, ooh, good question. I would say yes to begin with,
Mhm.
um, and then no because of who I am.
Yes. Yes.
I remember that quite early on, there was a guy that I worked with, and I was actually at a company where I got promoted,
Mhm.
and he got quite grumpy with me, and I'd talk to him, and he'd just go, "Oh, yeah," and the one day he just went, "Oh, just don't bother talking to me. You've changed. Now you're management. Now you're moving up. You've changed." And I said, "And what aspect of me changed?" And he said, "Well, you're not the same person. You're not making the jokes you used to make. You're not that." And kind of gave me this list. And
Mhm.
I turned around and I said to him, "Why is that?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Is it because I've now got different responsibilities to the
Mhm.
ones that I had?" And he said, "Well, I guess you have." And I said, "And still, do I still come down and talk to you? Do we still have jokes? Do we still have a bit of a laugh?" And he said, "Well, yes, we do." And I said, "So what about me, other than my responsibilities in my role, has actually changed?" And he said, "To be honest, nothing." And he was absolutely fine after that. But again, it was perception. And when I've gone into companies as a manager, I've made sure that I've connected on every level. That a company I worked at a few years ago, the biggest compliment, backhanded compliment, biggest compliment that I should never have received, but I did, was off some guys, and they said, "We like you. You're not like the other managers." And I said, "What do you mean?" They went, "You come and talk to us, and you talk to us not because you want something." And it kind of struck me that a lot of old school management, and this is where we separate between leaders and managers, that you know they were just saying, we only ever get spoken to by management when they want something.
Mhm.
And I said, no. I said, there will be times I want something, but not all the time. So yeah, there is that kind of separation, but it is down to that manager, that leader, to see that gap and to fill that gap. And this is how we get high performing teams.
Yes.
Because I've always explained to people, you've got your role, I've got my role. You
Right.
can't do what I do, and I can't do what you do. So we're actually reliant on each other.
And
And,
there's
and
have you ever found that so you're in a management role. I'm in a more subordinate, lower role. Um, and sometimes dealing with the different pressures, have you ever have you ever had to engage with someone that's strong, or when you meet them, you're like, "Ooh, that one." That one, or you come into a new environment and that one, whatever that identifying trait or behavior or interaction, they kind of throw you back. But then you later on, after you see everything of the dynamics of that person, you're like, I understand them. I
Hmm.
I'm You're not so as much fearful or intimidated, but you embrace them and you welcome them, and um you take that breath of like, oh, you totally. Then the next person that's never had them, they're like that one, and you're like, no, that one, you just don't understand them yet.
Yeah, yeah, very much. And we're all individuals. We all have
Hmm.
pasts. We all carry scars from pasts, um, and some people deal with it, some people don't.
Right.
And the ones that don't will project it because what they're actually doing is protecting themselves. So when we talk about um, grief, and grief really is loss, and it can be loss of self as well. I think
Yeah.
this is important to remember, that if you do lose yourself, you don't know who you are. You might actually be grieving for that. But the body copes with grief in many different ways. Um, and sometimes it's instant, sometimes it takes a lifetime to come out, because the body will only release what you can deal with at the time.
Right.
Breakdowns, I'm not going to say people don't have breakdowns from grief, but actually what that is too much. The body's releasing too much. It's not regulated. um Plus there's probably other issues there as well, and they all kind of add up. So yeah, when you're talking about understanding people, this is where we can develop as leaders,
Mhm.
even as team members, as co-workers, is understanding why someone is the way they are, and I was going to use the word dealing with them that way. um Trying to think if there's a better word, but kind of working alongside them, working with them. Now, in an ideal world, two people that are different, you would meet somewhere in the middle. In an ideal
Yes.
world. But unfortunately, we don't get ideal worlds. We get people who are very, this is who I am. Deal with it or not. And unfortunately, quite often those people are also the best, or seen as the best workers, the most productive. So we can't actually do anything about them in the organization, because we would be losing a key member or be losing a hard worker. And so sometimes we have to be flexible and meet them as close to them as we can, while maintaining our own boundaries.
Right.
Now, there's I can give some tips on dealing with this. It's kind of understanding, and I don't want to say make allowances for them, because you should never
Mhm.
make allowances for bad behavior. You understand how much of that you can tolerate, where your boundaries are with that person.
Mhm.
But sometimes people are so unaware of themselves that there is one little trick. There is one little trick um, that works really well, and the trick is called feeding their ego. And it's a trick that makes people like you. So if they're very aggressive, or they're very argumentative, or you can feed that. You can not feed the argument, not feed the aggression, but you can feed that part of them, and say, "Wow, you're so strong in your beliefs. You're such a powerful person. You're such how why did you get this way? How did you get that way?" And by feeding into their ego, by pulling out their strengths, that they are not saying, wow, you're aggressive, because that's confrontational, and you don't want to feed that confrontation. You want to say, wow, I love how strong you are in your opinions. How where's that come from? And when you get them into dialogue, you can start to then unravel where it's come from. It might be, it's just the way I am, and they close up, but we have to keep going back, and we keep go, oh, we're just having, bring them into a conversation. We were just having this debate about this. What's your opinion on it? Make them feel like they have some worth, make them feel, and then you can start to understand where they're coming from. And more often than not, the thing with conflict, the thing with aggression, the thing with, argumentative people, is that they need feeding. And quite often people make the mistakes of feeding the aggression with more aggression, feeding the conflict with more conflict. They need feeding. Feed them something else. Feed them kindness, feed them compliments, feed them,
Mhm.
because
And
that's what
see,
they're doing. They're actually hungry for something.
you're right on the aspect of they're hungry for something. And sometimes I feel like the people that are aggressive, um, and what people will tolerate is just, and that's where I feel like we have opposing views a little bit, because on my LinkedIn, I've said it for years. Focus on the content, not the delivery, because those people are fighting for something. And the key thing that's missing is the communication. So they're so focused on the delivery part rather than the content, and say, okay, they're advocating for this. That is why they're so passionate rather than aggressive. And that too would be a recommendation for anybody in a leadership role, is don't label someone's emotions as aggression. Rather, take a positive approach to it, as this is someone being vulnerable. This is someone putting their heart and soul into something that they clock out, and I guarantee you it wasn't something that they let go and forgot. It's they genuinely care about that. And someone being in a leadership always looks at it as like, oh, that's an opportunity for development. Are you listening? If what they're coming to you with is going to cost you money, or cost a relationship, or the dynamics of a team and how it works, or worse off, it could cost someone a job. It could cost them their, we see it all the time, cancel culture.
Hmm.
So that's where to me, I don't know, maybe it's the time I spent in the Marine Corps. I love I love the most difficult people. I love them. The people that don't say anything and are grumpy, guess what? Hello, good morning. Good morning. Or, you haven't had your coffee yet? Bet I got your coffee for you. Now, can I ask you a question? You're the expert. Um, or the people that are so quick to micromanage. Oh, I love those. I love those. You want to micromanage me? I will fill in your inbox. I will hit your messaging every 5 minutes. I will feed you. But the part where I won't do, and that's what you say, feed the ego, that's where this environment, this new model that's not even made yet, I don't feed egos in my life. And that's where the grounded comes from. And I think a lot of people that, if they took the Briggs Myers test, it can align with your, I think that test can help you a little bit identify with what grounds you. And I am very focused on whatever I go for in life. It has to align. It has to align with my core values, because at the end of the day, if I'm representing a company, I am going to be as close to the compass on their values. The people I align myself with, I always remember three things. Authentic doesn't always mean acceptance. Um, we are not perfect. We are always developing. And three, they're they have a hurt, they have a boundary, and be aware. And the one last thing that's not part of the three, this world globally is starting to understand trust is not automatic. uh, you get a friend request, it doesn't mean I accept your request and we're instant friends. We build, and that is where it all goes back to the communication. Trust, even in you being in a, let's say, a management role, you come in, you get this new group, and some are bright-eyed and some are skeptical, like you say, with body language. And that's where self-awareness, understanding, we don't earn you have to earn trust, whether it be through your example, your consistency. At the end of the day, what you say, what you write, it carries so much more weight the last couple of years. And you mark my words and you save this podcast, there's going to be a new model in 3 to 5 years on how fast we move our communication individually in everywhere we develop versus how we do it today. It will change 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's like you say, that where we are at the moment, there is no model. There's no past comparisons,
Right.
and it's just gonna, yeah, get bigger and bigger and bigger as technology pushes, because at the moment technology is the thing that is one of the fastest growing industries. And now, to me, if people want to stand out in that field, they have to keep inventing, they have to keep pushing. Otherwise they're going to end up being the same as everybody else.
Right.
And we all know the big boys win in the end, because they, even if they've got a competitor, they will buy them out.
Hmm.
Look at Meta, um, whatever they're called now, um, Facebook, Instagram.
Yes.
Did they buy Snapchat? Anyway, that it's just like, we want this, we're going to buy
Yes.
it. There's no, let's develop our own, let's bring our own technologies in. It's let we're going to buy it. And this is why I find LinkedIn quite interesting, the fact that it's owned by Microsoft, which is separate from um kind of like the big names out there, and they do seem to be developing their own things,
Yes.
um which I find absolutely fascinating, that they haven't gone out and brought, like we're talking about audio at the moment. Some people are beta testing audio. Microsoft haven't gone out and brought um, Clubhouse. I couldn't think about it then. They haven't gone out and brought Clubhouse, which, in its early concepts, wouldn't have cost them that much money to then integrate into their platform.
Right.
Um, but yeah, where we're going to be in 3 to 5 years, I really, really don't know.
And I,
Um,
I I can say, like LinkedIn being different, and I preach it all the time. NVIDIA, in NVIDIA, by the end of the year, is gonna either have a big announcement, but they will be a big game changer. If people are not watching Nvidia now, I have been watching them for years. I have been watching over 3,000 of their patents, and they move quietly. They make decisions and they move quietly, but trust me, when they surface, it will be amazing. And it's kind of like that feeling when Sony was the name years ago. They were the only one in the game. And then when the little guys came in, well, now those little guys are big guys. So this shift, I can't wait for it all to. It's kind of like if the universe was a big post-it note and we were brainstorming every component that we are experiencing all the senses and how fast it's happening, the universe has a big post-it that we're all just filling it in. We're filling it in. And we're gonna come to a place where we're gonna say, okay, we see in this brainstorming session with the universe, these little components, we can put them all together, and this is what we can do. And it's it us as individuals, we have to not get sucked into the everything that we're taking in. We're taking in a lot. Like, if you think about, let's say 30 years ago, I mean, I'm 47. I have no problem saying my age. But if you, I sometimes, I cannot sleep. I get up at 4 o'clock and I'm staring at the ceiling, not because I'm stressed out or there's something on my mind. I genuinely appreciate the silence. No
Mm.
cars, no phones, no nothing. The senses are just taking in this moment of silence. And to a lot of people that haven't even found that foundation for themselves, those kind of things distract them. They can't get there. And I think what you're doing is so amazing because people can absorb it. They can take it in, they can apply it, and then they can incorporate what's going to work for them. And self-discovery is something, the dynamic, when we come together, who would have thought we'd be two continents apart having this conversation? But we feel the same way. We're all trying to understand and get to a better place. I can't wait. One day we're going to have another discussion.
We will. It's it's just fascinating what you're talking about because one of the things that drives my own development, my own kind of passion is I feel that we are so lucky to be
Mhm.
alive,
Yes.
but to be part of a species that has so much potential that that we're pushing all the time, that we're inventing. And there's a wonderful book um, by a guy called Professor Brian Cox, who I'm not sure if you know of him in the States. He's got a very colourful history. Um, he used to be part of a band back in the 80s. Um, but yeah, he talks about the universe, and he talks. The one book I'm referring to is called The Human Universe, and I read the first couple of paragraphs, and I had to put it down
Okay.
because what he wrote blew me away. And he said, we're paraphrasing here, but we're so wrapped up in our lives, we don't realize that, we're one star, we're one planet in a galaxy of maybe, I think something like a hundred billion stars, and we're one galaxy of 400 billion that we know of, and we're one little person on that star.
Yes.
At one point that we're nothing. And that's good to remember, that in the grand scheme of things, we aren't actually anything. But the fact that we are here, the fact that we have the potential to travel to different planets, the fact that we've developed and we've pushed boundaries, and even of generations previous, and that we're doing things now that they couldn't even think of.
Hmm.
That they wouldn't have had, or most of them wouldn't have the imagination to even think about doing what we're doing now. And it kind of brought back to me, yes, we are so small in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, we have a responsibility as well to make a difference in our small way. that we have that responsibility because we are part of it.
Yes.
And that is one of the things that really drives me forwards, is feeling that I have that responsibility. And if I can help people along the way with their development, even if they don't agree with what I'm saying, The fact that they don't agree means that they've thought about it,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is the most important factor.
Mhm.
They've said, I don't agree with you because I believe this instead. But we've
And
started our
isn't that
discussion.
okay?
I think that's absolutely fine
I agree.
because I talk, I coach, I create content, I write from what I know and from my
Right.
experiences, and I know full well I can put a piece of content out today, and in 12 months I can look back and go, I can't believe I thought that,
And that's okay too.
or I could have put that so much better. And that's okay too, because it is the progress, it is the development of us, and I am a big believer. One of the reasons that I write content, or certainly I started a few years ago, was because I wrote it down, and it
Mhm.
was almost a marker to me of saying, this is what I know today. That's it. That's my marker. I would never say I'm putting this down because I'm right, because this is what everybody else should
Mhm.
do.
And
I put it
isn't
down and
that
say, this
an
is what I
amazing
know today. This is what
yeah,
I believe today.
and isn't that an amazing journey because I journal too, and like you said, what you may have done before, you think I could have done it different. That too, journaling, I don't know if you do it, but I go back. I go back to a same day, a year before, a few years before. I do the same thing with books. Uh, Carol Dweck, she did the book Mindset, and I go and use a different color pen. I've read her book 7 times. I use a different color pen to see if I have digressed or I have progressed.
Mm,
So, I totally identify with the marker. I do.
yeah, it is. It's really interesting that I'm trying to think of what it was now, but yeah, there's a few things that I kind of read, and I'm trying to think of the book now because I haven't read it for a while. I have to go and find it. Um, and it is a book that grounds me. It's
Mhm.
a book that reminds me of where we've come from, and who we are, and how we could be better. And but every time I read it, something different resonated with me because my
Yes.
understanding, my development was further on. I'll have to go and find it. I haven't read it for a few years now. I'll have to go and find it.
You have to tell us what that book is.
Yeah, but it was one of those books that I read, and then different things resonated with me because they made more sense to me. And I
Yes.
think that, when we look for, um, do you want to call it validation of development? That, I journal. I don't very often go back and read them
Oh,
because,
you'd be surprised.
and it's because I think that my journaling is very much getting things down and out that I no longer want in my head and in my life.
But it's a
I
lot of strength to go back and
I
see it.
have gone back in the past. I must
Yeah.
admit, it's not something I do on a regular basis. But yeah, journaling is so underrated. And again, when we talk about those words that people throw out, people
Yes.
say, "Oh, you should journal," and I'm not sure everyone is completely sure of why you should journal. I'm not sure everyone realizes what a powerful tool it is.
Yes.
It's just it's a brain dump at the end of the day. Oh, it's just
No.
it's way more than a brain dump. It shows that development. It shows that thinking. Um, and almost writing shows me my development because I can, and I do it sometimes. When I say I don't go back, I do sometimes, but I'll only go back a few days ago. What was I thinking of? What was that idea? And then I'd look at the idea and go, well, where did that come from? That
Mhm.
that's wrong. Why was I thinking that at the time? But that's where I was. That's what I was thinking at the time. So we can take it all as positives. I mean, I think that, pulling it back to kind of leadership and things, that leaders should use journaling a lot more,
Yes.
and what's to stop you sending yourself an email or writing an email at the end of the day of what's gone on, and your thoughts, and what can be improved, and what needs to be removed, and whatever that is, and or just leave it in drafts, or send it to yourself, or and I think that journaling is something that is slowly dying off because we no longer write. I mean, I have a pencil with a rubber. So I've gone back to that because I like the feeling of it, and the way that, maybe I'm a little bit odd, but
Not at all.
but
Not
I
at
do
all.
I do like the feeling. But I think that journaling and things like that, we can be brought into leadership, into management
Yes.
roles, and it's not just that quick email having to explain why something's happened.
Right.
It's sitting and putting your thoughts down, and it's never for anybody else to read, really.
Right.
Um, I'm sure mine wouldn't make sense to anyone anyway, but yeah, all these kind of tools are saying, well, how is today gone? How am I feeling? What are positives, or whatever you want. The one thing that put me off journaling for a long time was because there was far too many people telling me how I should be done.
Yes.
And I was like, "Oh, right, I need to write down 3 positives, 3 negatives. Oh, I need to write down my emotions. I need to write this down. I need to write that down." And it got very overwhelming, and I stopped for a while. I didn't really start. I tried to start a few times, and then I was just like, "Right, I'm just gonna pick up a notebook, and I'm gonna write whatever I want to write." So you can look back, and sometimes I'll be like, um, it'll be about stress, it'll be about pressures. Other
Yes.
times it'll be the happy places. Other times it'll just be thoughts or plans or dreams, or oh, I had a conversation with someone today, and they mentioned some destinations I'd really like to go to, so I'm gonna jot those down. So for me, the journaling became about what was in here,
Mhm.
and not so strict of writing down the positives, the negatives, the things that could be improved.
Yes.
And they do have their place. They do have their time, depending on who needs to do it. But for me, journaling was very, very progressive. And even kind of from a leadership perspective, that I used to journal when I was leading teams, and right, what's gone right today, what's gone wrong today, what do I
Yes.
need to research, where do I need to develop, how can I handle this person. And it was a case of taking that away and going, right, what do I need to work on. And what was really interesting, that actually is how my personal development started. It was, how do I get better at my job?
Right.
And then it kind of led on to, well, actually, it all comes back to self.
Yes.
And this is when I, at the start, and kind of circling back, when I was saying I couldn't list a single value of mine. I could list my work ones. I could tell you exactly what I valued in work, but then it was like, well, do I value them in my personal life?
Mhm.
That's the one I couldn't answer. And then it's kind of, and so that development started in, how can I be better at my job? What do I need to do? What tools are there? And then it was like, well, I can start bringing these tools in. And then my leadership style changed, because
Mhm.
I could give you my 5 values as a leader at the time, as a manager, but I couldn't give you my personal ones. And then when I worked out my personal ones, they didn't match completely with my work ones.
Isn't that interesting?
And this is a lot that I talk about separation, and people talk about a work-life balance. And for me, the ideal, the ultimate, is a balanced life. You shouldn't be living 2 or 3 separate lives. You
Right.
shouldn't have 2 different personas. Who you are at home is who you are at work, to a certain degree.
And they're bound to blend together at some point and blur.
Yeah. And that to me is the ultimate kind of development is as you develop yourself, you take that into all aspects of your life.
Yes, I
Um,
agree 100%.
and it's a fascinating subject, absolutely fascinating subject. And I hope that um, people listening have got some value from this. I know I have, and it was nice you disagreed with me as well, because I don't like
Yes,
people
yes.
agreeing with me all the time. Um, because we have different thoughts, different approaches,
Right.
and with different people, different backgrounds, different experiences, and this is what's so valuable about communication, and let's go back to that,
Exactly.
and conversation, is the fact that I think it's not a very well known fact that you can actually strongly disagree with someone and not have an argument with them.
Yes, yes. And
and
see, we can still laugh. We can still be, unfortunately with technology, they want to, oh, block, but it's not that serious. Diversity is so, diversity and thoughts are so welcomed because we can take it back and we can approach it a different way even if we're not the if that's not our way of doing it. So I love this kind of dialogue. I love philosophical and difference of opinion. It's a round table because your mind, my mind, everyone else's, we will be setting that new model, whatever it may be.
yeah, and it's going to be a fascinating. If we're both around, we'll sit down in 3 years and see if your predictions are coming true,
Pencil
and
it. Pencil it in.
pencil it in. Yeah, and certainly, yeah, looking at new models, it's fascinating to watch, and it's fascinating watching people trying to reconnect with who they are. I think that's gone
Mhm.
on a lot of the pandemic, because even my experiences, because so much of us was taken away, that people then didn't know who they were,
Yeah.
because they couldn't do the things that they filled their life up with, and it became very uncomfortable for some people. And then again, that's that lack of grounding, that's the lack of understanding about who they are, it's the lack of wanting to develop and raise that self-awareness. And I over in the UK during lockdowns, I was absolutely fine. I was like, okay, I can't do this and I can't do that, but I'm okay. I'll just do this instead, and I'll just do that. So I can't go out, so I'll just sit and read. I can't, and it's just I can't go out and see friends, so I'll spend a bit more time online talking to other friends. And we don't have to lose something. We just have to adapt and be flexible,
Right.
and come at it from a different perspective. Um, but no, thank you so much for your time and your input. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Oh, you
Um,
as well. I really enjoyed it.
and I hope that everyone listening will enjoyed it and got some value as well. And thank you so much. And we will say good night. And
Good
thank
night.
you to everyone for listening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.
Bye